Hello everyone, I'm Rick Zanotti, and welcome to eLearnChat. This is episode number 67, June 18th. Wherever you are, we hope you're having a great day. All of you guys who are live in the chat room, thanks for being there. And if you're watching the recording, please subscribe. We're now on YouTube at youtube.com/RELATECASTS. So we'll see you there. All right, today let me introduce you to our co-host. She's right next to me. Hey, Colleen, how are you?
Hey Rick, good morning. How are you? And hello to everyone in the chat room. I believe we have some viewers in the UK as well.
Yeah, you got really low all of a sudden, by the way.
I beg your pardon?
Your volume got really low.
How's this,
Yeah,
Rick?
there you go. Now you're back.
Okay. So, hi everyone again. And on our third iteration of going live this morning, welcome to the show. And Rick's going to introduce our guest today.
Yeah, so today we have a senior engineer from the Aerospace Corporation. At least that's part of what he does. It's a long list of what he does, which unfortunately I don't have in front of me. But we have with us from Aerospace Corp, Tom Spiglanin. Tom, how are you today?
Good morning, Rick. I'm fabulous. How is everybody out there?
We are doing well. Had some audio issues this morning, but I think we've recouped, and for some odd reason, our live show keeps dying. So hopefully Justin.tv is not having any issues. But if it does, if anybody sees it, let me know, because it's a really small little light that comes on. And when it's on or off, it's really hard to tell if it's on or off. So to me, it looks on right now. So I think we are okay.
I'll keep the Twitter feed open so I can see what's happening.
All right, sounds good. So Tom, today we're going to talk about fire, things burning.
Sure. So, on-fire learning. On-fire learning is what happens when people find learning in every single opportunity, every chance encounter, everywhere they go. Every one of us has had those kind of experience at some point in our life. You get really excited about something. You get jazzed. You get just so animated that you can't stop yourself from doing it. It happens almost happenstance sometimes, and when you find something that's really interesting to you. The problem is we forget how to do that sometimes, and the fire goes out.
You know, that's a real good point, because more often than not, if you notice, people, it's not even as we get older, it's even the youth, there's not a lot of passion for what they're doing, whether it's their job, whether it's a hobby. Sometimes you get more passion out of hobbies, but a lot of times people just seem I'm gonna drag through life, and they kind of go into victim mode. There's nothing that really excites them, and yet all around you, like you said, there are so many exciting things, so many things that are fun. You can learn. There's never a day where you can't learn something.
Correct. That's exactly right. And the problem is, if you think about a little kid is always learning. I mean, you've got that natural inquisitiveness. Kids just are interested in everything. And when you walk into a restaurant and you see a little kid at the next booth over and they just stare at you, well, how many of us adults stare at other people? We don't do that, right? We learn not to do that. And in a way, we need to unlearn some of that to find that natural inquisitiveness again.
But then we're going to have a lot of strange people staring at us. That's the only problem.
Well, I don't know if we want strange people staring at us, but...
I actually hate those little kids at restaurants who go around staring at, just like, turn around, go back and sit in your seat.
Well, you just give them a good look, like,
that's right,
and away they go. They go,
stare back,
and they turn around. See, people like me are why they learn to forget, or why they forget how to be inquisitive. But
that's funny. No, I've given my nasty stares a couple of times with the kids in restaurants, but anyway, yeah, that is interesting, because really I think it does have to do with passion. It has to do with something that I always find it interesting how many people just seem to have no interest in much of anything. Kind of go through life just kind of ambling along, and you just go, wow, there's just so much you're missing.
I would agree with that. And when you get into the workplace too, things tend to get a little bit different. I mean, it starts out where you're excited, you have this job, and you're doing new things, and after a while, I'm doing these things, but it's still a paycheck, and I have all these other obligations. I now have a family. I have a car payment I have to make. I have to make the mortgage every month. I have to keep this job, so I have to do really well in this job. But you stop taking risk, and risk is a big part of that excitement. Not everybody likes to take uncalculated risk, but when there's a little bit of edge, you tend to get a little bit more animated about things.
Well, that's true. And that kind of goes back to the spirit of being, if you work at a company, being an intrapreneur, where you're actually not just sitting there and occupying space, but actually trying to make a small difference. And, there's a lot been said and talked about in companies that, people don't feel loyalty to the company because the company doesn't have a lot of loyalty towards them. And that's understandable. Mm-hmm. But on the other hand, while you're there, might as well try to do the best you can and get the best you can out of it, because there's always an opportunity.
Right. I think there's a big difference, though, between doing the best you can and getting the job done adequately and really being excited about something.
Sure.
And when we go to conferences, for example, it used to be in the old days you didn't have social media. You go to conferences to meet new people, and you usually come back, you've gotten some new ideas, and you're really excited about this, and nobody else in the organization has gone to that conference. You're the only one, and you're trying to share that enthusiasm. And the lack of enthusiasm from others helps to inhibit you from pushing forward and trying to be more excited about that. And you go out saying, hey, let's try this new thing, and nobody wants to do it because they just don't see the benefit of it.
Right.
So Tom, you talk about in your blog, which I've also posted in the chat room, you talk about corporate universities and that there's somehow a conflict with this type of on-fire learning. You want to talk about that some more?
Well, I think most of us in this area, we've realized that the old way of doing things, which is organizations would set up corporate universities or just their learning and development organizations, modeled more or less after the way universities do things. And the university model is you have a professor, and the professor is the expert. The professor puts together lectures. Maybe they base it on a book. Maybe they base it on their own experience and notes. And they stand in front of a giant room full of people and talk. And you get into the organization, and we try to do the same thing, or at least in certain subject areas. And it's just not an effective way to learn. I mean, research has shown, I've got dogs barking, but research has shown for a few decades now that when you have people learning together, it's a much more effective way to learn. People, when they have a stake in the outcome and others count on them, they perform better. And new ideas come out because when I'm working with someone else and I've got an idea and they've got an idea, we build an idea that's bigger than one that the two of us would have had independently. So when you get collaborative learning, social learning, problem-based learning, and integrate that into educational programs, you have a much more effective program.
Yeah, a lot of times there's not a lot of communication back and forth between personnel, whether it's a manager, a director, or a VP, and the people under them. Not a lot of questions asked, not a lot of dialogue that goes on. So not much learning goes on in some of those cases. Or, like you said, you've got maybe forced learning. Here's what you need to know.
Exactly.
But you never really ask the person, what are you getting out of this? What do you like? What don't you like? What do you feel your strong points are? I always ask people, at least I try to, what are your strong points? Where do you feel you're strong? Where do you feel you're weaker? What do you want to do about making the weaker better, the stronger even stronger?
And I think those are great questions. So it sounds like you're a good manager. I mean, if I were working for you, I would enjoy that. I happen to work.
Oh, he froze.
I think we lost
First
him.
came in.
Oh, there you go.
Asked
Sorry.
me those questions.
Well, I'm sorry. Can you go back? You froze for a moment on Skype, and we lost. You said I happened to, and then it just disappeared. You're back.
Oh, okay. I happen to have a very good manager as well. And she asks open-ended questions, a lot like the kind you were just asking. And, what are your strengths? But she also challenged me. And one of those challenges was to step up my game, so to speak, asking me what other organizations are doing. And so my first response was I have to go do the usual stuff. I have to make trips. I have to go visit other organizations and ask them what they're doing, make phone calls. And I convinced her to send me to a conference, and that plugged me into social media in a way that I had never been plugged in before. And I discovered social media is the way to get these answers in seconds. And that really ignited my fire.
Now, that's interesting. I do agree with part of the social media that you can get answers in seconds, but I've also found that in many cases there are no answers. It just really depends what you're asking and what level you're asking it. It's sort of interesting. There's a lot of kind of chatter out there, But when you ask specific questions, and I've done this a couple of times, for example, on Twitter, I will ask a specific question, something technical, maybe something a little more arcane. Nothing ever comes back. So I always found that rather interesting. On occasion, if you ask something in the mid-range to, let's say, a simple question, you'll get answers. When you start getting a little more arcane, now it could be just that a lot of the more arcane types are just not on Twitter or something else. They're too busy doing whatever they're doing.
Stuff.
So that's sort of, yeah. And especially when you get more technical. Obviously, if you're going to go into something related to, let's say, advanced computing or physics or engineering, whatever, you're probably not going to get as quick a response.
I would think that's probably right. But there's one interesting thing is you actually have more confidence in making the negative statement. One of the things that I don't want to identify the individual, but I have a coworker who said, "Yeah, we are leading the field in this area." And I said, "Oh, come on, there's got to be somebody else out there that's doing something similar." And he says, "No, we're state of the art. We're at the top of our game." And I've got the network, so I asked the question on the network, and I got responses back. Oh, there's a lot of stuff going on out there that's of a similar nature. Mm-hmm. But if you have one of those where you share something, and I was asking a question about curation, at least the general concept and how you go about curating information, and whether anybody has deployed a system where experts in a number of different fields, because I have research scientists and engineers. They are all specialists in one discipline or another, and I'd like to get them to curate information. So I was asking, does anybody else have something like that? And I hadn't gotten anything back so far of anyone that does anything similar to that. So it gives you a little confidence that you're doing something that might be a little bit more state-of-the-art, but I'd never be so bold as to say no one is doing it.
That's probably true. Well, also that leads a little to the insular nature of a lot of corporations, where, like you said, because they don't really get out a lot, they think they're the only ones doing it. One thing I've always found interesting is when people discover new things, have you noticed that things are discovered almost in parallel across the world? Or with literally microseconds sometimes of a difference between the time one comes up with something and another one comes up with something, and usually whoever publishes first gets credit, but it seems like development many times runs in parallel in different places. People are on the same track.
Sure, like alternating current to convey electricity from point A to point B instead of DC, the telephone, telegraph, all those kinds of things. Sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's always really fascinating, but yet many people think they're the only one because they're, again, in that insular world. Now, engineers do tend to suffer a little bit from that. I've worked a lot with engineers, and there's that little bit of I'm in this world, and I'm so busy in my world that I don't really kind of look out to see who else is in the world. And I think that's part of research on the whole. They're very in tune with what they're researching, and some of them do go out and do other research. Some of them are just in their environments or in their labs, and they don't move much out of it, which is kind of interesting. And getting back to your point about trade shows, I think one of the good things about trade shows is that they do motivate people. They spark people to, for a while, if nothing else, get excited and go, hey, I just met these people and they've got these ideas. And what a difference that makes, because now they're starting to think about things a little beyond what they normally may think about. Now, that may die 6 months later, but at least for the time being, they're getting excited.
I think it's the time it's taking to die is a lot longer now because of the connection that we're having with the social media.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's actually the key, and that's why this fits, in my opinion, in eLearnChat. I was thinking, why am I talking about on-fire learning when it really is not, and there's no E in on-fire learning. And it really is social media, I think, that is one of the keys to keeping that fire burning.
Mm-hmm.
And Tom, that's Eon Fire Learning. There is an E there.
Eon Fire Learning.
Now, Tom, you mentioned here and I'm going to read it from your blog post. It says, as learning and development professionals, we can lead the change toward the rekindling by becoming the change we want to see and igniting and supporting change in those around us. If you're working in an organization where you don't have that sway, you're really low on the totem pole, what are some of the ways you think we can effect change in our diminished roles? No,
I think that's a good point. When when we come back into our organizations, it's very difficult to do things and get other people to follow suit. I think you and I heard at that talk the other day that, you know, if one person shows up on time to a meeting but everybody else is late, you're not going to keep showing up on time to the meeting because the meeting's still going to start late and you're just wasting your time. So this is a little bit different in my opinion, because the individual that sits as the node in an external social network, the knowledge network that they've developed, and also is a member of work teams, you've got a lot more influence and a lot more power than you've had in the past, because you're not just one individual anymore contributing at work. You're bringing the power of the network back in. People will take notice, and in my case, they have. Mm-hmm. People are coming to me and asking questions. Hey, can you ask your network this question? And I get responses typically at least within an hour or two. Mm-hmm. So that's one place where you can, in fact, change your behavior and make a difference in the workplace. And I have people now asking me
I have a really good friend who's trying to support the use of Yammer in their organization, and they're getting so much pushback from even the folks on their team who are opposed to it. And there are several other individuals who are trying to use it and trying to kindle, to develop that fire that you're talking about. But sometimes you get pushback from one person, and it's just enough to diffuse any type of flame that's there.
Sure. Actually, I'm curious, what kind of Yammer is this? Is this an internal Yammer, or
it's an internal Yammer for?
So they have the site stood up behind their firewall.
They have the site set up behind their firewall, and there's been all pushback from varying flavors. For example, the Yammer was started organically, and then when people higher up in the organization found out about it, they wanted to do some analysis, so they put a pause on it. They put the brakes on, and for all the hundreds of folks who signed up, they just lost interest in it. When the C-suite finally came back and said, you can try it again, most of the people just lost interest in it. So the few that are still trying to promote this initiative are getting pushed back because now IT has chimed in and said, well, this is not something that's high on our agenda, so you have to kind of shut things down. So they're still trying to use it within their small group, but they're getting pushed back within the group as well, because I think some of the folks that are in the group think that it's just additional work, and they're not even trying to see the value of it.
Well, it also depends on the groups. Not all groups do well with Yammer or other similar tools. It depends on how much they need to communicate, what they need to communicate, how much the company already communicates. So I think we tried it. It didn't do anything for us. It just became one extra thing we had to go to, and it just didn't make any sense because we're already talking all over the place. So for us, it didn't work, but it might work for someone else. It just depends on the organization and the kind of people in the organization. I think one of the worst things is when any of these things become a mandatory requirement, then nobody wants to use it.
Exactly.
I know companies that use same time and other things, and they loved it until everybody had to use it, and all of a sudden nobody uses it anymore. So it's just sort of interesting.
Well, it's interesting. I think about this metaphor of learning as fire, and I know metaphors they're never perfect, and they always break down at some point, and you shouldn't use it as a model in any way, shape, or form. But it's interesting when you talk about Colleen, you were talking about the Yammer was developing steam. It was developed organically. People were using it, and then it was shut down. There's a fire that's just starting to burn, and somebody came along and squirted the fire extinguisher on it and basically put it out. And now they're trying to build that fire back up, and it's just not taking hold. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Here it was working, and now it's not.
It was working really. I mean, it was working the way that the people who use Yammer envision it to work. I believe you're part of that Yammer group, the L&D Yammer group, I believe it is, or Instructional Design Yammer group. Are you part of that?
The American Society for Training and Development, ASTD, has a Yammer site that L&D professionals, instructional designers, can share ideas, and inside there, and it's easy to join, inside there you can post your thoughts, you can respond to others, and that's a nice community. That's a real community of practice there.
Community. They have a lot of energy there, a lot of fire, if you will. And there's a lot of participation, a lot of contribution by the community.
And one of the comments that I made in one of my posts a while ago is it's so important today when you're spending resources as resources are dwindling in organizations. You want to try to get things right. And what better way to get things right than as you're developing these designs, you are working with other experts out there like yourself, and you can iterate that design with them and get ideas from the community.
Now, let me challenge you a little bit on this one. And this is something I like doing just because of the nature of social media, if you will. A lot of these initiatives and companies may be started by let's say, training departments. Training departments tend to be more touchy-feely. Other departments are much more operational, may not care as much. And when some of the initiatives that are put out by training get out there, nobody really cares. So I think that's something that, I hear a lot of training professionals always saying, that this initiative didn't work, and it was such a sad thing because it would have been so great, maybe for them, but maybe not for anybody else.
Exactly.
And I think that's one of the problems that, I read a lot of, everybody has to be into social media. Not everybody's that social or cares that much about being that social. They may get social every so often. They may get social all the time. It just depends on the individual. And really it depends on the corporate culture. There are some cultures that are very social, some that aren't. And I think we tend to push something sometimes that maybe as a learning professional they think is great, but no one cares.
Sure.
What's your thought on that?
Well, let's see. A couple of thoughts. First, I think it may depend on the size of the organization, so you need to take that into consideration. But assuming it has some minimum critical mass where you do have enough different people with enough different backgrounds that you've got some fiefdoms, you've got different organizations that set up their walls and these are my responsibilities and those are yours, that kind of thing. You need to develop your internal team, in a sense, your internal network, the same way that you build your external network. You need to find like-minded people in those organizations and work with them. Make sure that they're involved. So this program that I was putting together that embedded social media into a formal training program that we had in communication skills, I started by going to the IT group, and I found the people who were championing the social media development at the company. And I got them involved. And even more interesting than that, they had run out of funding to actually deploy a solution behind the firewall this year, but we had our own solution ready to go, so they jumped on our train. That had a huge impact. So they were looking at us to say, will our engineers, which are largely baby boomers, will they actually want to use the social medium? And they did.
So they embraced it pretty well?
No, they're pretty good at it. Yeah, I was surprised.
Now, in this case, for them, was it a way to get more information, to get a little more connected with what other groups were doing?
Well, this is behind our firewall, so this is really connecting them, the students in the class, to one another over an extended period of time after a formal session. So I actually brought them into the classroom. We did a day's worth of stuff where we used to do 2 days, and then the rest of it was entirely done online. So to me, it was an opportunity to get to know these people better over a 4 to 6 week period. Usually my students come and go and I don't remember their names.
Right. So that's interesting. So in that case, it became a way for them to keep in touch, to learn more, and to realize what other groups are doing?
Exactly. So in this particular case, the big mistake I made is I ran 2 concurrent sessions. So the old model, I could put 12 students through the class. The new model, I could put 24 students through the class, but we ran a concurrent session, so I had 48 students. That was a lot. And on top of that, we videotaped them making presentations, and then they were commenting on each other's videotapes. I had to comment on each and every one of those, and it surprised me how much time it took. But it was well invested because, like I say, I now have a personal relationship with those 48 students that I probably would never have had. I think in the past, almost 100 students that I've run through this class in the conventional way, I could remember 5 of them.
That's actually pretty significant, because you're right. When you do training and you're doing training in groups, you may remember the ones who are most in your face or the ones who know the least, and everybody else kind of falls by the wayside, and there's not much of a relationship.
And the other thing that's happening is because this class got changed, it got a lot of new visibility, and I sent out a survey of the past participants that I can't really talk about too much now, but that triggered several of them to start scheduling the same class now with this new format, and so I've got demand for it that wasn't there before. I could obsolete myself. I could train every person in the company myself, and I'd be obsolete.
That's interesting. I was watching a special last night. It's I think it was called Through the Wormhole or something like that, with Morgan Freeman. He was the narrator. But it was all about, yesterday's episode was about, can we resuscitate human life and all the things that they're doing. And they had a researcher in Japan who is building very lifelike androids. Actually, they were pretty amazing. They have everything from little tiny actuators that can move every little part of their mouth, their eyes. So they actually look quite realistic. And his goal is one day to be able to bring a human brain into one of these androids, somebody who's either near death or can't, or heavily, let's say a quadriplegic who can't move at all, and liberate that brain. An interesting concept, a very science fiction-y, but fascinating the way they were going. And they were talking about how cells reproduce and how they're working on some kinds of heart surgeries where they literally freeze you so that they can operate on you without any blood pumping for 45 minutes. No heart machine, no heart lung machine, nothing. And then they resuscitate you again by warming you up. It's really fascinating stuff that's going on in the medical world. But again, same idea. How do you bring those things to life, if you will, in a corporation? And part of the problem in most corporations is that there isn't much of a channel. Well, you know what? It really depends on size too.
Oh, it
the
totally
larger the
depends on size.
corporation, sorry, there have to be some controls. You can't let people just completely go wild, because they will. Sadly, a lot of people aren't exactly the most motivated to actually produce much. They'll just sit around and do nothing. So in big corporations, they have a lot more, I guess, if you will, rules or just things to make sure that productivity happens. Otherwise, it can become a complete free-for-all. So you'll see less freedom in a larger company, and we're talking probably 10,000 and up, even less. It can be just several hundred, versus what you see in small dynamic groups.
Yeah, there's a very interesting trend that I noticed at the training conference I went to in February of this past year. They did a survey of companies, and I forget the number, but it was a large number of companies surveyed, and asked what they were doing regarding social media and embracing it, installing it behind the firewall. What policies did they have in place? And there was an interesting correlation between the size of the organization and whether or not they were using social media. The really big organizations, talking 100,000 person organizations, they were doing it. The really small organizations were doing it. The ones in the middle were the ones that were struggling. And I think that's because they have proprietary information they wanted to protect. They have limited budgets and resources to deploy these solutions, and so they were more struggling of what to do. You get smaller and you just do it using the public internet.
Interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And a lot of the large companies, we work with a couple that are actually quite huge. One of them has about 700,000 employees. They do everything on same time. And that is their internal social network, if you will. Anybody has a question, they go on same time, and they may get 5, 10, 20 responses, or one, depending on what they're asking, very quickly. It's interesting. And so same time becomes Yammer, if you will, of a sort. It's more of a chat, not quite where they keep documents or anything like that, though it is tied to, I guess, some sort of other document management system and things. But it is an interesting way to communicate internally. They don't pick up the phones. They go on to their same time.
It's the same concept, though. I mean, it's not that I'm promoting Yammer or any of these tools. It's just the whole idea of collaborating outside of what's considered normal, like an email or a phone call.
Mm-hmm. Right. I think there's a big difference, though, between same time and Yammer. We do use same time in our organization, and there are different aspects of same time. There's the audio aspect where you can actually set up sessions and share screens. And there's also the text chat type version of it, the instant messaging version. And we do use that quite a bit. So you set up group chats and that kind of thing. But that content is not archived like it is in Yammer.
That's correct.
And it's not asynchronous like it can be in Yammer.
It is different, and that's I think, like you said, that's a big difference between the two. But I find that in a lot of corporations, people want that real quick instant. They may not care about whether it's archived or not. They just want that quick chat. So just a different mindset or need at that moment.
So Colleen, is there any chatter going on in the chat area? Because I've got that turned off now. But I'd like to find out if people out there
they're having conversations. I think they're just chatting about stuff that you're saying. There was a question earlier. Let me take a scroll up and see what.
Well, I am curious if other people have run into situations where they've been thwarted in their effort to learn, or they came back from a conference and were really excited only to be shut down either by management or peers who was like, oh, there they go again. Because I tend to get that when I come back from these conferences now, and it's, hey, this is really exciting. It's like, oh God, there he goes again.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was discussing. I had this conversation with a group of students the other day, and it was in relationship. It was in regard to learning objectives and creating learning that has a real organizational need. And one of the examples that I was telling them in regard to learning objectives and performance support is, going to conferences, going to any external learning event, or even sometimes internal learning events, and when you get back to your group or your department not having that support and being shut down, and they were all, it was in unison. Yes, I think that happens to everyone. That happens to most of us, where you get the fire extinguishers pulled out and that enthusiasm is diffused. After you spend like 2-3 days out in the training environment, and then you come back in, it's almost the experience is almost one where they negate the learning completely, because there's no support of it, there's no enthusiasm, there's no.
I could not agree more. And the Kirkpatricks have a they call it actually comes out of Australia, but it's called the red pants phenomenon. So you go to training and you're the only person in your organization that gets the training. And as a result of the training, they hand you this very nice pair of red pants, and you put this on and go proudly back to your organization wearing the red pants. Everybody else is wearing black pants. And slowly, but over time, you sneak into the bathroom and you change your red pants for black pants because you're standing out and nobody wants to see the red pants. Mm-hmm. So you go back to the old ways of doing things.
Yeah, and also, depending on the corporation or agency, change happens slowly. Mm-hmm. It's rare you have those aha moments where things just go boom and there's a big change. It tends to be more evolutionary, a little slower, and occasionally maybe one department over another might have a bigger change, but it's rare where one individual can make that much of a difference in a huge. It can happen.
It can happen, and that's actually one of the reasons that I'm so excited about bringing social media into the training organization. Mm-hmm. I think that is the thing that's going to make a big difference, and it's kind of a perfect storm of opportunity in some ways. I don't know if my organization is unique. I doubt it, but we have people who all recognize the need to move conversations from private spaces like email into more public spaces like we do in the external Twitterverse. And bring that inside the firewall so that conversations are happening in a much more transparent manner. Every executive in the United States today, at least, is talking about transparency. That's the big thing. And I bet in most of the world they're talking to the word transparency. Every executive is now trained to say that word, even if they don't necessarily embrace it themselves.
Yep, that's true.
Yeah, I think transparency is one of those words that they're using right now, and they're being abused. Because
just look at government. We won't go too far on that one, right?
Most
politicians talk about transparency.
Only if you don't want to be shut down, Rick.
Yeah, really.
There's a question right now. I'm going to segue the conversation out of politics. There's a question by Dawn earlier. I'm pretty sure you might have answered this, Tom, but just to put it out there for folks who can't see the chat. Are you able to use this type of collaboration in your organization, and what workarounds do you have in place?
I guess the question is what type of collaboration we're talking about. I have built a network of people in my organization. and I've got them in the corporate communications area. I've got them in the IT area, and I've got them actually in the engineering and the programs areas. And they're all very excited about doing this. The engineering group is particularly excited about the idea of curation because these are people who do research for a living. They find other reports, they find other resources, and they bring them in, they synthesize new ideas and try them or solve problems for the benefit of our customers. And they're already doing that work. Well, then they go to write papers, and they almost do that work all over again because they have handwritten notes or they have photocopies stuffed in file cabinets. They're not necessarily the most organized. If they curated that information, it would be right in front of them. So we've actually got a lot of synergy, a lot of shared objectives, if you will.
Now, isn't curation just another word for knowledge management? That was another word for just people getting information? In
Absolutely
essence,
not.
Knowledge management systems did a lot of that, where they were able to keep information so that other groups within it, and some of them had heuristics that could intelligently find stuff you were looking for based on previous searches, based on other information. How do you see that different from let's say curation, which many times is nothing more than just links?
Oh, I think there's a world of difference between the two. Knowledge management, as practiced in organizations, was typically document management. It was not true knowledge management. The first thing that the IT department wanted to do was to own the knowledge management system, and that's the wrong place for it to be owned, so to speak. I mean, yes, they have to manage it, they have to operate it, they have to make sure that the quality of service is there and that sort of thing. But you've got to change culture to actually get people to share information like that. And it's not so much just sharing documents and putting them into repositories. Those repositories have to be completely transparent as well and open. And typically they're not. At least the ones that I've seen are not. And I'd love to hear if other people have different experiences.
Then that's a good point, because IT really, like you said, manages the system. They really shouldn't control the system.
Right.
But knowledge management systems can do more than documents. Unfortunately, many of them wind up falling into just a document trap. But in essence, a lot of them are built to be, if you will, curation systems where you can put random pieces of information that get organized in one way or another so that the system, which can do, many of them can do Google-like, but more intelligent searches, can find information that you can share with others. It's similar to having a lot of links out there. I've seen a lot of what people call curation now, and it's really nothing more than just having splash pages or just links of things out there. And again, I think it depends on what we're doing or how we're curating.
Right, and there are a number of curation tools that people talk about. Tools. There's the scoop.it, Scoop It. I can't remember all of them. I tried several of them. I've abandoned all of them, with the lone exception that I now use the Press This button on my WordPress blog. That is, to me, that's the easiest thing to do because it allows me to then categorize things. I can move things around using all the WordPress tools. And I create my own abstract. I don't have to use the first paragraph or whatever the Scoop It tool happens to pick.
That's interesting. Yeah, I didn't like Scoop It. I tried it
Oh, paper.li is another one.
Yeah. I actually like that one better, I think.
Dawn just shared with us that she would be wearing her red pants, FYI.
Are you wearing your red pants right now, Dawn?
Not going to succumb to black pant pressure.
Well, not everybody is as strong. But I will say that having the power of your network behind you does help you quite a bit. And whenever I have people telling me that I'm off my rocker, I have this array of people behind me saying, no, you're not. And that helps.
Either that or we're all collectively nuts.
Well, we could all be collectively nuts, and you do have to avoid groupthink. That is important.
That's that.
Don't want to swim in your own bathwater.
I think that's a good place to end the show. But that was very interesting. That was a very good show, and Tom, we really appreciate you coming on.
Well, thank you for having me.
And let's get. So, for all of you, actually, Tom, are you going to be appearing anywhere? Any talks, any shows real soon?
Not appearing necessarily anywhere, but Chat to Learn tomorrow, which the blog post was already shared, is at 8 Pacific and 4 o'clock p.m. British Standard Time.
Is that on Twitter?
That is on Twitter.
Okay, and that's Chat to Learn.
Chat number 2 Learn, LRN.
LRN. Okay.
And your blog is?
We had the blog up a couple of times. Let me put it up again. Here we go. So there is the blog, and it's got the URL right there. So feel free to freeze the video when you're watching this and go watch the blog. It's a good blog.
A good blog, yes. And the blog, your blog URL is Tom. What's it?
It's tom.johnandrewrankin.com, and that's a long story in itself where John Andrew Rankin came from.
Yes, long story.
So that'll be for the next show. The real secret of...
Oh, we're not going to get into it.
No, we won't get into that one, huh? Anyway, everybody, you guys have a great day, and we'll see you next week on eLearnChat. I think next week we've got one of the reps from Blue, correct?
Yes, I'm trying to confirm that right now, Rick. I sent out an email to
So it's going to be a show about microphones.
So if you're into microphones, and you know, we've been asked the question so many times, both you and I, and I've seen the question floating around in forums, etc. What's the best type of microphone to use? What's the most cost-effective one to use if you are doing voiceover for your L&D work? Well, hopefully, we will have Blue microphone on the chat next week.
Sounds great. Well, have a good one, everybody. Thanks, Tom.
Thanks all.
Thanks.